Yesterday, when I responded to the question in Parliament, I talked about the powers that the Commissioner of Corrections had in the law itself. That's what I spoke about. That's what the question is about. So I answered it accordingly. It is obviously, politicking by Shamima once again to expand it into something else that it is not. I simply spoke about because the question was about what's the government policy in respect of releasing prisoners. And as I highlighted, that there's no policy by government as such regarding the affairs of prisoners when they actually get sent to prison. It's actually premised around the laws that are in place. And the laws under the Corrections Act has a number of provisions. And as with all independent institutions, whoever is the head of the institution is empowered under the law to make various decisions pertaining in this case to prisoners and the affairs of the correction services itself. And that's what I highlighted. To try and now extrapolate that into something else is obviously quite misleading. I am guided by the law, as everybody should be. It's unfortunate that people like Shamima and people like yourselves who talk about rule of law on one hand, but you don't actually want to apply it when it suits you or it doesn't suit you. The fact of the matter is that there's a particular provision in the law that says the Commissioner of Corrections does have specific powers and has the discretion to use those powers. And that discretionary powers actually have been used by various commissioners in the past too. It has got nothing to say about government's commitment about, for example, laws pertaining to sexual assault. As you know, there is this government that actually brought about the Domestic Violence Act, which people like Shamima actually eventually debunked. As you know that's on record. They debunked that. This is the only government that actually had the gumption, the audacity, and the political and the administrative commitment to actually put in place laws that address specifically the issue of domestic violence. And people like Shamima and others actually debunked it at that point in time because they did not like government. But we put that in place. Similarly, we've also looked at various laws regarding what used to be called the Penal Code. Now it's the Crimes Act, where we have actually expanded the definition of sexual assault. And in fact, the whole old age and discriminatory provision where that put the onus on the woman or female in particular. As you know, most females in Fiji, over the world, all around the world, generally females actually get sexually assaulted. It's not to say that men and boys don't, but females do get sexually assaulted too. The age-old discriminatory provision, where the burden of proof is in fact on the woman to actually prove that she was actually raped. We reversed that, we changed that, we modernized that, brought in new provisions pertaining to sexual assault. And again, we brought in provisions pertaining specifically to do with children and expanded the scope of the laws that apply to that. So again, you see, this is misleading the public. And you yourselves as journalists need to understand that. You need to be able to understand what is actually happening, what are the laws, as opposed to simply coming around and saying that this person has said that and therefore what is our reaction. You should be able to have the intellectual strong will to be able to say, well, this is what actually used to happen, this is what has not happened, this is what is happening now. So, again, it sort of in a way discredits the questions that you do ask of us, because you're not looking at it holistically.